Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back to the Weigh In Podcast. We're doing a recap of UFC 325. It just wrapped up about 2 or 3 minutes ago. The main event concluding with Alexander Volkanovski retaining his title against Diego Lopez. Just going to recap the main card and then give out one fight of the night and two performance of the night bonuses, at least from my end, my opinion of who I think should get the bonuses. So let's get straight into it. Kicking off the main card was Quillen Salkild making his return against Jamie Malarkey. Salkild made very quick work of Malarkey, a first round submission, made it look pretty easy as well. Salkild really looks like he's going to be a very dangerous threat at 155 pounds, and a lot of people kind of forgot after his knockout of Nasrat Haqparast how good he really was on the ground. Very well rounded, very dangerous in all realms. I think he absolutely has to have a top 15 opponent next. Um, Jamie Malarkey is a tough test. He's not exactly a guy that's really going to beat any of the top guys, but he's a guy that we know what we're going to get from Jamie Malarkey, so he's at least good enough to show where a guy like Quillen Salkild is at in terms of his development. But Salkild made it look pretty easy. Really didn't take much from him to get the rear naked choke. A little over halfway into the first round, but really just made it look easy and fantastic victory for Quillen Salkild. So definitely want to see him in there against a ranked opponent next. Can't wait to see what's next for him. Didn't take much tonight. Next up was a heavyweight bout between Tai Tuivasa and Talison Teixeira. Tuivasa returning after about a year and a half layoff. Last time we saw him was August of 2024. And Talison Teixeira, last time we saw him was back in September. It was an embarrassing first round knockout against Derek Lewis, about 30 seconds in, maybe. But early in the fight, it looked like Teixeira was going to kind of run away with it, but he gassed later in the fight, ended up winning a unanimous decision. For Tuivasa, that is his sixth straight loss inside the UFC. Considering he took so much time off and he's such a big fan favorite, I kind of doubt he gets cut. Plus, the heavyweight division is so thin. But definitely a rough loss for Tai Tuivasa. And he did have to share a hurt a couple times in the final round, but both guys were just so gassed, and Tai just didn't have anything left in the tank. He wasn't able to get the finish, but he definitely had to share a rock a couple times in that last round. So for Tuivasa, obviously most likely going to fall outside of the top 15. In my opinion, he should, and should be going up against an unranked opponent next. That fight's going to be the must win for him. If he loses 7 in a row, he probably gets his walking papers. Most guys would get their walking paper, or I'm sorry, that'd be 6 loss in a row. My apologies. But most guys would get their walking papers after their fifth straight loss. But Tuivasa, considering he's such a big fan favorite, and again, he took so much time off, he may get one more. He might get one more. As for Teixeira, a win is a win. However, you want to see him improve his cardio in his MMA career. That was the first time he'd even made it out of the first round. And you could kind of tell after the first round, he almost didn't even look like he knew what to do when he was walking back to the stool. It was kind of funny, but definitely had Ty in trouble throughout the first round. Second round kind of took his foot off the gas, and third round was just completely gassed. So you definitely want to see Teixeira work on that gas tank. He is only 26, so he's got plenty of time to make that adjustment, but if he's going to get up there with the best of the best at heavyweight, he is going to have to adjust and fix that gas tank. Otherwise, that will be a massive problem for him moving forward. But he's very long for the division, excellent jiu-jitsu, so still has a bright future, just got to fix that. I still kind of want to see him against one of the guys in the 10 to 15 range in the heavyweight division just because he's going to need to fix his gas tank. And if he starts going in there against some of the guys in the top 10, I just don't think his gas tank is going to hold up as well if he gets into that top 10. So maybe stay towards the bottom of the rankings for now before getting a guy higher up. But definitely a nice bounce back win for Teixeira. Our feature bout was a striker's delight and a very fun one between Rafael Fiziev and Mauricio Rufy. And this one was definitely fun while it lasted. There was a lot of technical striking going on. Fiziev was doing a really good job with the pressure, keeping Rufy with his back against the cage and landing some big shots. But Rufy was really landing his jab the entire fight. That was one thing that Fiziev just really didn't have an answer for, was the jab of Mauricio Rufy. And eventually Rufy did follow that jab up with a massive right hand that dropped Fiziev. Rafael was trying everything he could to stay in the fight, but ultimately succumbed to the strikes of Rufy. So knocking out Rafael Fiziev is a massive feather in the cap for Mauricio Rufy, and coming off that loss to Benoit Saint-Denis, that was a win that he really wanted to have. Obviously, he's young, so it wasn't like a must win for Rufy or anything, but you know, if he wants to prove that he's one of the best at lightweight and one of the prospects to keep your eye on, that was a massive win for Rufy. And putting your striking up against a guy with at the caliber of Fiziev is such an impressive win for the rising star out of Brazil. For Fiziev, that is his fourth loss in 5 fights. So really tough to see Fiziev in that spot, but likely going to get someone in the 10 to 15 range of the lightweight division. Maybe even another unranked guy. You never know. Quillen Salkill needs a ranked opponent. Wouldn't hate that, but definitely a tough loss for Rafael Fiziev. And at 32, you start to wonder he should be in his prime right now, and he's losing fights. So tough to really imagine Rafael Fiziev getting to that upper echelon of the lightweight division. He's exciting, so he's going to be in some fun fights. Maybe even throw him in there with Dan Hooker. I would not be upset with that either. Fun guy to watch, but just don't think he's quite at that top tier. But for Rufy, that's a massive win for him, and he's going to be getting another top 10 guy for sure in his next fight. Um, just a huge win for his career, and like I said, coming off that loss to Benoit Saint-Denis, that's just a massive win for Rufy and one that is really going to propel him to that next level in his career. Still on the right side of 30 as well. I believe he's 29 if I remember right. So still got a lot of time ahead of him, a lot of time to grow, and training with Alexander Volkanovski is definitely not going to hurt either. So big win for Rufy. Something for him. I would like to see him get his back off the cage a little bit more. I know Fiziev was really piling on the pressure, and that's a guy you have to be very careful with when he's moving forward. But for Rufy, I would just like to see him not press against the cage in the next fight, but still a fantastic win. Great strategy, great counter, and can't wait to see what's next for Rufy. Next, we get to the co-main event between Dan Hooker and Benoit Saint-Denis, and we knew this one was going to be fun and blood and guts for as long as it lasted, and it was. Ultimately ended with a TKO finish for Benoit Saint-Denis. Kind of just beat down Dan Hooker, and Hooker's one of those guys where he can withstand a back and forth battle with just about anybody except the upper echelon of the division. Guys like Arman Saruki and Islam Makhachev ran through him, but even went toe to toe in a blood and guts war with Dustin Poirier. So that says a lot about Benoit Saint-Denis to be able to run through Dan Hooker like that in the second round. Hooker did do some really good work to the body of Benoit Saint-Denis in the first round, but BSD was able to recover. You could tell he was hurting, covered it up well, but you could tell it was definitely giving him problems. But BSD did a great job just to stay in there. You know that dude is all blood and guts, just absolute warrior. Went forward like he always does. A little reckless from Benoit. You want to see him clean that up when he starts to get into that top tier, and that's really where he's starting to get into now. The guys like Max Holloway, Charles Oliveira, Arman Saruki, and Ilya Topuria. You're not going to get away with those kind of mistakes going up against guys like that. So you really want to see Benoit kind of clean that up just a little bit, not too much, because that is part of what makes his style so much fun and what makes him such a big fan favorite, but maybe just tighten it up just a smidge, just a little bit, just a little in his next fight. But I liked his call out. He said he wanted either the BMF or the undisputed title. Obviously, he's not going to get an undisputed title shot. It's going to be Justin Gaethje next, and Ilya, in my opinion, is going to win that. But whether it's Ilya or Gaethje, I don't think BSD is going to be next for that anyway. The realistic possibilities, he said he wanted the BMF winner, which would be Holloway or Oliveira. I like that. Or Arman Sarukian. I would not be upset with that either. It needs to be one of those two, in my opinion, either the BMF winner or Arman. If Arman's not going to get the winner of Gaethje and Ilya, throw him in there against Benoit. Why not? If Arman is going to get the winner of Gaethje and Ilya, let's see Benoit against either Holloway or Oliveira, whoever holds the BMF title. Benoit is the definition of a BMF. He's just blood and guts, go forward, just nonstop pressure. So I think that'd be a great fight seeing him against either Oliveira or Holloway. So, but absolutely going to get a top 5 opponent next. One more win, I think, for BSD does get him a title shot. So he's right there. Not quite at the title shot yet. I appreciate him calling for it, but one more win, BSD's in a title fight. As for Dan Hooker, tough loss, but like I said, I kinda wanna just see him in some fun fights, and that seems to be the kinda headspace that Dan Hooker's in right now too, just getting some fun matchups. Um, the Rafael Fiziev matchup I wouldn't be upset with, but there's also some bad blood brewing between him and Paddy Pimblett. Maybe you do some kinda main event in England and run that for 5 rounds. I wouldn't be upset with that either. I think, Dan Hooker being a fun guy, there's a lot of options for him. Maybe you even throw him in there with Mauricio Rufy, who knows? We'll see, but maybe Moicano could be an interesting option. I mean, there's definitely options for Dan Hooker moving forward. This loss is tough for him. He's not gonna see the a title fight at any point in his career. I think that's pretty clear now, but still a fun guy, still brings it, still loves to fight, so he'll get a fun matchup. We'll get to see Dan Hooker in another war for sure. But that takes us to the main event, the featherweight championship. Alexander Volkanovski defending against Diego Lopez, and it was pretty much the same story as the first fight. Volkanovski just cleaner, more technical. Diego was a little too hesitant, in my opinion, and that's something that I really saw in the first fight as well. He does his best in those wild slugfests, and he just tried to keep it too clean. And when it looks too clean, you're playing the game of Alexander Volkanovski. And Lopez did score a little bit of a flash knockdown. I think it was the third round, if I remember right. It didn't really hurt Volkanovski too bad, but definitely connected, definitely dropped him. But Volkanovski bounced right back up, recovered quickly. But for Diego Lopez, obviously, it's going to take a lot of work to get to a third UFC title shot. He is a fan favorite, but as long as Volkanovski is king, of course, I really don't think we need to see that fight again. And this kind of just proves the critics correct for saying how unnecessary this matchup was. With Diego getting the basically an immediate rematch against Volkanovski. Um, at least from Volkanovski's perspective, it was immediate. So, but that pretty much went exactly the same as the first fight did. There wasn't really a whole lot that was different. I mean, Diego was moving forward quite a bit, but that was as clean of a performance as you could see from Alexander Volkanovski. Just beautiful technique, phenomenal footwork. The jab was on point, attacking Diego's legs, and Diego actually hurt himself with a kick. Maybe broke his foot or something in the fifth round, so hopefully he's okay. And did have some wild grappling exchanges in the fifth round, but again, it was a pretty clean performance, and that really takes us to the champ of Alexander Volkanovski. Phenomenal performance. He ties Jose Aldo for the most title fight wins in the UFC at featherweight. I think it's kind of hard to argue that Volkanovski is the greatest featherweight of all time. He holds a win over Aldo and 3 over Max Holloway. I think that kind of speaks for itself. So, don't really think there were too many people arguing it going in. I thought it was still kind of a toss up between him and Aldo, but after that, I definitely think Volkanovski has kind of taken the lead and can crown himself as the greatest featherweight to ever live. In his post-fight interview, he called out Movsar Evloev and Lerone Murphy. I'm not upset with either one, whoever you want to give it to. Personally, I like to see Movsar, but again, it's like I said in my pre-fight stream on Twitch. I don't really see a lot from Evloev that can really threaten Volkanovski because Movsar doesn't have a finish in the UFC, and to beat Alexander Volkanovski, you have to finish him, unless you're Islam Makhachev. But if you're fighting against other featherweights like Volkanovski staying at this weight, I just don't see a featherweight that can beat him in a decision. I just don't. I think Volkanovski's a guy you have to finish him if you're going to beat him. And I just don't think Movsar has that ability. Lerone Murphy isn't exactly a known finisher either, but that win over Aaron Pico, of course, was a big moment for him and much needed. But I just, I don't know. But I feel like Lerone is a slightly bigger threat, but Movsar is the more deserving of the two, in my opinion. He is the number one guy. So I would like to see Movsar get the next title shot personally, but it doesn't matter. I mean, just want to give kudos again to Alexander Volkanovski. Just such a clean performance. It's crazy that at 37 years old, he's still putting on these championship level performances. So shout out to the great Alexander Volkanovski. But now let's give out some awards. My fight of the night pick is going to be Khan Offley and Yi Jia. There weren't really a ton of options to choose from in terms of fight of the night. There weren't really that many just real battles like that that were real close, I mean, there were some fun fights, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't say it was a boring night by any stretch, but that's really the best candidate for fight of the night. So it's more just that's the best option. It's not really that that one stood out necessarily, but I'll give fight of the night to Khan Offley and Yija. It was, I believe, the first official like UFC prelim. You had the road to the UFC tournament for the first three fights. Those guys are ineligible for bonuses anyway. So Khan Offley and Yija, I'll give my fight of the night. The performance of the night bonuses are a little bit tougher. I will give Benoit Saint-Denis one of them for his win over Dan Hooker. Phenomenal performance. And then it's really tough. It's either Quillen Salkeld or Mauricio Rufy. I think I'm going to have to give a slight edge to Rufy for knocking out Rafael Fiziev. I know that's a little bit boring giving it to two of the guys on the main, like, in the feature fight and co-main, but I don't know. Salkeld was a lot more dominant, and I do like that. But for Mauricio Rufy to knock out Rafael Fiziev, I cannot overstate how big of a deal that is to knock out a guy like Fiziev. So that's why I give a slight edge to him. Salkeld had a phenomenal performance. He'll get the $25,000 finish bonus, of course, and I'm sure the UFC will take care of him a little bit as well. But I would have to give my second performance of the night bonus to Rufy for knocking out Fiziev. That is crazy, insane performance. None of these performances are really going to be any that we necessarily discuss at the end of the year for any kind of awards or anything, but they are significant just in terms of the stakes and the movement within the divisions. Statement for BSD, statement for Rufy, and the continued dominance of Alexander Volkanovski. Fun card overall. I thought the Aussie crowd was pretty fun. Did a good job supporting their guys from Australia, New Zealand, the Oceanic area. So fun card overall. Didn't really have any fights that were boring necessarily, but nothing really stood out from this card. Like we had a clear standout last weekend with Patty and Gaethje. No real standout moment from this card, but definitely an entertaining night. So that'll slap a bow on UFC 325. Fun card. I enjoyed it. Some good performances. How about Alexander Volkanovski, folks? Remaining on top, continues to dominate the featherweight division. Can't wait to see what's next for him. And I will be back with you guys next week for our first fight night of the year. See you guys then. Peace.